Isaac. I'm responding here to your paper, Controversies with Artificial Intelligence. In the year 2050, artificial intelligence has improved to staggering new levels and is now a major part of everyone's lives. Whether it's in your phone, your car, your house, or your place of work, you cannot escape it. In this situation, do you imagine this AI to be good like C-3PO and Jarvis? Oh, C-3PO. Or bad like the Terminator and Replicants? Everyone has a different image in their head of how AI will be in the future, and no one knows for sure which one will come true. These different speculations are the basis of the controversial topic of AI. Will it be good? Will it be bad? Question mark. Will it be good? Will it be bad? Right, you need a question mark there. The main factors that change these opinions are how AI handles data and privacy, the legal liability behind it, and how to work around biases with it. Lovely. The only tiny thing that I would change is I would say something like, it is the year 2050, period. To set up for your reader, like, for sure. Because at first I was like, is it a typo? Did you mean to write 2020? I mean, just to give it that for sure, like, oh, we're going into story time, which I think is a great way to open this. Okay. The most talked about, most controversial issues with artificial intelligence is the issue with privacy and data collection. A big reason why people take issue with the data collection is that as artificial intelligence evolves, it magnifies the ability to use personal information in ways that can intrude on privacy issues by raising the level of personal information to new levels of power and speed. I like the quote. The collection of personal information and data is because a large portion of modern AI is made for personal use. So naturally, it's personalized for the user, which needs data from the user. What? It's made for, but it's not for personal use, really, is it? Isn't it for, like, marketing? This makes sense because if you want a product that works better for you than other products, this needs to happen, but how far is too far? Yeah, I mean, just personally for myself, I felt like I'm totally fine with having, like, the targeted ads. Like, I looked at something, I didn't buy it, and then I see, like, there's a little ad like, don't you want to buy this thing? That doesn't bother me at all. I know some people are just, like, really freaked out about that. But I feel like for myself, I feel like the small, it gives me this little convenience of, like, oh, did I want to buy that? But on the other hand, the idea that, and maybe you'll get something like this later, the idea that I think that, like, if you have a rewards card at Target or something, things might actually show different prices for you. Or, like, they talked about this on travel websites too, right? Once your computer, like, knows who you are, it could show a person who is more affluent, a person who has bought more expensive travel before, higher prices for this flights than for somebody who has, like, never bought a plane ticket according to their Google persona or something. Okay, and then you're getting into that. Another problem with data discrimination is, data collection is with discrimination. Definitely a new paragraph. The AI that businesses and other groups can use can be, quote, aimed at data discrimination affecting economic opportunities, public accommodations, or voter suppression. This issue is already being worked on, though. Okay, still some great stuff, but after you said economic opportunity, public accommodations, voter suppression, after your quote, you need to explain your quote. I'm going to say always. In this particular case, explaining the quote would probably be something like giving an example of how it would affect economic opportunity, how would it affect public accommodations, how would it affect voter suppression. Okay, this issue is already being worked on, though. That also could be a new paragraph, but I'm pretty, like, tiny paragraph biased, so. Because in 2019, a group of 26 I had no idea, and consumer organizations wrote a joint letter advocating to prohibit or monitor the use of personal information with discriminatory impacts. These groups advocating for this to be stopped is great, but until this is actually fixed, the advocacy should continue being done. The problem is not one that can be completely fixed with a new algorithm, because in some cases there just might be a reason why it's happening. What? Like what? You definitely need to say more there. And I guess the issue is, like, are we all going to count on, like, people who are having meetings and stuff to try and draw awareness to, like, protect people from racism. Like, that doesn't seem like, I don't want to depend on those people, whoever they are, because, like, I mean, it seems like they're just, yeah, like, they're just people. They're not in government. They don't seem to have any power here. So what happens with data collection? Should it stop or should it continue being done? Some would argue that data collection should continue, but with more rules and restrictions. Okay, good. Because you were about to get into the either or fallacy there. And I'm just going to say, those aren't the only choices. It's not just stop or continue. And here you go. More rules and restrictions. In general, the research community needs better access to government and business data. Although with appropriate safeguards. Ooh. So I have not thought about this, and you definitely should explain this. The research community needs better access to government and business data. So what you're talking about here is people who are like scholars, I guess, right? Like nonprofit scholars. Those people, if they had access to government and business data, like they could do good things for the world, which I think is a really strong point. But yeah, you need to explain that if that's what you're saying, which I think it is. This approach makes sense in theory. If you have more rules about data collection, then nothing bad will happen. But the problem is that rules can be broken and problems still will not be fully fixed. Well, I mean, yeah, but that doesn't mean we don't make rules, right? Other people might argue that data collection, I mean, that just means we need to work on enforcement and basically make it worse for people if they do this thing than it would be if they don't do it. Don't ask me how we would do that. I don't have a clue. Okay, with this argument, AI would become significantly less useful and would need to be redesigned in multiple areas. The next issue is how biases should be dealt with when creating AI. Okay. Bless you to the doc. Most controversial bias is whether AI should do something in favor of the user or a bystander. In his article about AI physicist, that name, good for you on figuring out how to make that special Z, wrote that autonomous vehicles will sometimes be forced to choose between two evils, such as running over pedestrians or sacrificing themselves and their passengers to save the pedestrians. As an onlooker in the situation, the answer to what the car should do seems clear. It should save the group with the most amount of people in it. Ooh, it's the trolley problem! Do you know about the trolley problem? Now you do. Okay, so I feel like you've jumped into this a little too quickly. How biases should be dealt with. One example of how bias will be dealt with is this thing about the autonomous cars. I mean, there's many, many others, right? It's sort of sounding like you're saying like this is the only way that bias. Okay. As a Donlicker, although ethically this is true for some people, for people who believe in, is it Kant, the trolley problem? I don't know. I just say Kant because that's a fancy person. That's a philosopher. I've heard of him. Although ethically this is true, what about when purchasing this car, people knew that the car would allow them to be injured? When there was an option to save them, they would not buy the car. Unless they don't have a choice, right? I mean, the government creates a lot of rules for cars and how they run and how they can be built and how they can be sold. But, okay. Another issue with biases in AI, which I've already briefly touched on, is with discrimination. In some cases, the AI is not necessarily the reason why discrimination happens, but instead it aids in discrimination for its user. This is definitely a new paragraph. A January study, blah, blah, blah. You have good sources. Users with distinctly African American names are relatively less to say yes. This issue, although not as much the IA's fault. So I think what you're saying here is the other issue is like how people will use the AI is also a problem. Like they will use it to like carry out their own biases. I think that's what you're saying, but you haven't actually said that. So you can fix that part. When it comes to a discussion of biases, it can get a bit complicated. There are really arguments about what should be done with biases and different things done, but some biases must be completely removed. It describes it perfectly in an article of biases in an algorithm, no matter which way the dials are set. Any algorithm that has biases. Oh, awesome quote. Awesome quote. Although it may not ever be completely fixed, most people would agree that minimizing these issues would benefit everyone. Oh, sorry. I lost my place. Biases should exist for the user to control. It goes back to Airbnb and their situation. Whoa, I thought we were ending the paper. But now we're looking at a whole new thing. This goes back to Airbnb. Some people argue that where they want to stay in Airbnb is a practice of the right to use service. What? I don't know about that. You definitely need to explain some more about that. Almost every field of law can be applied to at one point or another. So this means that with that means that many laws that can be applied. Okay, see that's not just me. Too many that's. That. Edit at least one of those out. Patentability, blah blah. There are many problems when it comes to difficult to patent. Why is it difficult to patent? And why is it difficult to uphold the patents? Okay, because of the complexity of AI. See, you're answering. So many little parts and different between all of them. It's difficult to tell which part belongs to the original creator. Okay. Another legal problem. Whoa. Anytime we have a transition word like that, I'm like, stop new paragraph. I don't know why you wouldn't. Okay, because... So I think the problem on page 3 is that it started to feel really like the end when you're like, biases, it can get complicated. That absolutely feels like a conclusion. But then we're adding on more. Patentability, yes, difficult to understand. So here's an example. It's lovely to have examples. Very effective. Important case, test associations vehicles, in situations when people fall, someone decides to sue, who will be at, okay, or somewhat difficult to accomplish, mostly one-sided, people very much closely monitored, having a black box with all AI would raise the price. Yeah, and that's a moment we have to say, like, what do we want to spend our money on, right? I mean, it raises the cost of cars that they have airbags. It raises the cost of cars. That's not a good example. Well, maybe it is. They legally have to have airbags now, I guess, don't they? But, like, I mean, going way back, like, cars are required to have windshield wipers, and they're required to have seat belts, and that makes them cost more. So, okay, another way the legal bit fixed is with the monitor, I don't know what that means. Monitorization from real people. Like monitoring, you mean, maybe? Okay, New York City has started to do that, monitor the fairness of algorithms. Oh, cool. Stance is that it should be continued, but with restrictions. Biases should be eliminated. Problematic technology. Okay. And then you, as I said, you had some good sources. Okay, so I feel like your main thing that you want to do to revise is that there's just some like organizational stuff. As I said, it starts on page 3 when it gets to discussion of biases. I'm going to go through that whole last part and just make sure that each paragraph only talks about one thing. And consider that you might want to move some of them around. Just consider like the order of how you present them. But yeah, overall, good stuff. Thank you.